This is why you should never rush to conclusions. Once there was a young couple getting married. At their wedding reception, their friends decided to play a game of hide and seek with the bride and the groom. It was decided that the groom would try to find his bride and the bride would find somewhere to hide. But hours passed and the groom had searched everywhere in the venue and couldn't find where she was hiding. He assumed that she must be having second thoughts about getting married. He got mad and stormed off. Weeks went by and he accepted that she must have gone on with her life and didn't want to contact him anymore, so he did the same. A few years later, though, the cleaning lady found something horrifying. She went into the attic of the building where the reception had taken place years ago. There, she found an old trunk. She opened it and found the rotting body of the missing bride. Her face was still frozen in a scream, and inside the trunk were huge scratch marks from when she tried to get out.
This is why you should never spread rumors. Once there was a girl called Grace who always wore a hat to school. Even in the summer, she always had a knitted black beanie pulled down to her eyes. Soon, the rumors started around school. Some people said she must have bald patches or have another medical condition that the students didn't know about. Either way, she was constantly bullied for always wearing that hat. One day, Grace's class had a new teacher whose eyes immediately fell on Grace. She said, "No hats in class." Grace's eyes widened and she went pale. "Well, what are you waiting for? Take it off." Grace replied, "I can't." The teacher grew angry, reached over, grabbed the hat, and yanked it off of Grace's head. The room fell silent. Then screams, vomit, terror, and chaos. The back of Grace's head was blown open. Bits of skull caved into her head. A small matching hole sat on her forehead near her hairline. Grace then stood up and ran out of the room, sobbing. That was the last anyone has ever seen of Grace. A couple years passed and people stopped talking about it as much until a new kid joined their class. A kid who always wears a scarf.
Next in my 7 Deadly Sins series, I'm going to tell you about the Menendez brothers whose greed made them kill both their parents. At first, the Menendez family seemed like the perfect American dream. The dad Jose was a wealthy immigrant who worked his way to the top, and the mom Kitty was a pageant queen. However, in 1989, their sons Lyle, who was 21, and Eric, who was 18, bought shotguns in San Diego and shot their parents 15 times while they were watching TV. Their mom was actually shot in the leg while she was trying to escape, and then shot in the arm, chest, and face, leaving her completely unrecognizable. Both parents were also shot in the knees to make it look like it was connected to organized crime. Then the brothers went to a movie theater to see Batman, and Lyle made a 911 call after they returned. Because of their parents' deaths, they inherited $14 million, which they spent almost $1 million within the first 6 months. But the thing is, they went to therapy afterwards, and it was during these therapy sessions that Eric confessed on tape after the stress of it all gave him an ulcer. This led to both of their arrests. After a total of 3 trials that lasted nearly 7 years, they were sentenced to life in prison without parole for murdering their parents for money. This is why things are never as they seem. Once there was a man who didn't want to get married because he didn't want to spend money on anyone else. He thought that if he got married, he would have to pay for his wife's food, clothes, and other items, which he didn't want to do. However, one day he came across a beautiful young woman who oddly never ate a single thing. He thought this was perfect. He wouldn't have to pay for her food and she could be his wife. He quickly asked her to marry him. But of course, things are not as they seem. He noticed that his supply of food was disappearing even though he never saw his wife eat. So one day he decided to spy on her. And what he saw was terrifying. He saw his wife's hair part in the back, revealing a huge mouth on the back of her head. Her skull split open and the mouth was unnaturally wide with huge teeth. Then he watched as his wife's hair twisted into a long strand, grasped handfuls of food and shoved it into the mouth on the back of her head. When she noticed her husband, she attacked him. He managed to get away and hide in the mountains. Weeks later, when he got the courage to return, he found his wife gone and all of his food taken. The man never married again.
Story time. My girlfriend wants me to propose again because she didn't like where I did it the first time. I decided to propose to my girlfriend of 3 years on our 3rd anniversary. I flew her to Vietnam, and after a couple of weeks traveling, we ended up in Cambodia. These were all places that were on her bucket list. After a long day of hiking in the heat through ruins, we retired back to our hotel, and when we were alone together, I proposed and she said yes. She took a shower, and I laid in bed thinking what an amazing day I just had and how I would get to spend the rest of my life with the woman I loved. When she came out of the shower, she was in tears. She handed me back the ring, saying she couldn't accept it because she didn't want her memory of my proposal to be in a hotel room. I played it cool and said I understood, but truthfully it hurt. I took her halfway around the world and helped her cross something that she wanted to do most of her adult life. I felt that if she valued me, it wouldn't matter that the proposal wasn't exactly what she wanted. It was me and our future together she was saying yes to and not my delivery. If she found $1 million in a dumpster, she wouldn't throw it back because of where it came from. So she can't possibly value me or what I have to offer as an individual. I'm preparing to end things when we get back. But am I wrong? Should I do it over?
How far would you go to make a wish come true? For one boy, his wish would cause him to do the unthinkable. At first, this boy had a normal life. He lived with his parents in a small town, and every time he lost a tooth, his parents would tell him about the tooth fairy. They said that he could bury his tooth and make a wish, and that wish would come true. Until one day, a tragedy that would change his life forever happened. His parents were in a car crash, and he was the only one who made it out. By this time, he had no more teeth left to give to the tooth fairy. So this boy went into his father's tool shed, took a hammer, and knocked out all of his teeth one by one. He was sent to a mental hospital after that, but after a few years was released. It seems like everyone in town forgotten about the tragedy of his family until a series of home invasions were reported. Nothing was ever taken in these home invasions except the parents would find their children in their beds crying with their teeth knocked out. When they found this pattern, the police went to the boy's home and found it abandoned. But in the backyard, they found over 1,000 small teeth buried. This is why you should never take a prank too far. Once there were two young twins who lived in a small town and they were known for constantly misbehaving. One day a man had passed away peacefully in his home and the twins wanted to play a prank on everyone else living in the town, so they snuck into the house and started messing with the man's body. One twin moved his mouth like a puppet and the other one poked his eyes out with a stick. As they were doing this, they heard footsteps. They couldn't find anywhere to hide, so they placed the body back in the coffin, then got in the coffin themselves and closed the lid. But what they didn't know was they were taking the coffin straight to the funeral. The people carrying the coffin noted that it was much heavier than usual but brushed it off. No one even noticed that the twins were gone until the coffin was lowered. The twins' mother appeared at the cemetery about the missing twins, which stopped the funeral and began a search. Eventually, the man carrying the coffin confessed that the coffin had weighed more than it was supposed to, so they lifted it out and opened the lid. They did find the boys there, but they found them lying on top of the body, whose hands were wrapped tightly around each of their necks. The twins had been strangled to death.